He does not see the sun anymore. The supreme leader of Iran is now operating from somewhere beneath the earth, in a hidden bunker even his own officials cannot find. Messages reach him by courier. Replies take days. Washington is negotiating with a ghost. The most powerful man in Iran is hiding. The next round of war waits above him. American intelligence assessments suggest Iran's supreme leader Mojtaba Khamenei is now operating from a highly secretive, undisclosed location with extremely limited outside communication. According to a CBS News report, citing US officials familiar with the intelligence, the communication delays inside Iran's leadership structure have become a major obstacle during ongoing ceasefire and diplomatic discussions between Tehran and the Trump administration.
When the U.S. sends proposed details, the difficulty in reaching the supreme leader means there can be a long delay before the U.S. receives a response.
The report says that messages are allegedly being relayed through a complex courier network designed to conceal the supreme leader's location and prevent Israeli or American targeting operations. The report also claims that senior Iranian officials themselves often do not know the supreme leader's whereabouts or have direct access to him. US officials cited by the report said the secrecy measures intensified after American and Israeli strikes during what they called Operation Epic Fury, which reportedly eliminated several senior Iranian commanders.
U.S. and Israeli intelligence obtained from inside the Iranian government has made it possible to locate and eliminate much of the Iranian senior leadership during the war.
Officials added that many Iranian leaders are now operating from fortified underground bunkers and minimizing direct communication.
At this point, most Iranian leaders don't see daylight, spending weeks inside highly fortified bunkers and avoiding speaking to each other unless absolutely necessary. Watching them try to figure out how to talk to each other is almost like watching a sitcom. They are completely exasperated.
Meanwhile, Iranian officials continue projecting defiance despite growing military and economic pressure. Massoumeh Aghapour, economic advisor to Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian, said Iran's oil exports remain operational despite sanctions and naval pressure.
Iran has alternative export routes and oil infrastructure beyond Karg Island and the country's southern export terminals. We have other routes and other oil resources in other regions for exports, which we are not going to reveal.
At the same time, senior IRGC-linked official Mohsen Rezaei warned Washington that any renewed US military action could trigger a broader regional escalation. Speaking during a ceremony on May 24th commemorating those killed in the recent Iran-Israel conflict, Rezaei warned that Tehran could withdraw from the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty if attacks resumed.
If you enter the Persian Gulf, first of all, we will give a tough, painful, and unprecedented response and break the naval blockade. But more importantly, we may withdraw from the NPT. Do you know what will happen to you if we withdraw? So, don't commit suicide.
Rezaei also warned that any future conflict would not remain limited to the Strait of Hormuz, saying it could expand into the Red Sea, Bab, El Mandab, and the wider Indian Ocean region. The developments come as ceasefire negotiations between Washington and Tehran remain ongoing, with both sides publicly signaling diplomacy while simultaneously preparing for possible renewed confrontation. A preliminary agreement may be taking shape, but on the question that matters most, Iran is drawing a firm line. Iran has not agreed to surrender its stockpile of highly enriched uranium. A senior Iranian source told Reuters on May 24th that Tehran had not agreed to hand over its stockpile of highly enriched uranium and that the nuclear issue would not be part of any preliminary deal with Washington. The source was unambiguous. Any discussion of Iran's nuclear program would be reserved for a final agreement if and when negotiations reached that stage.
The nuclear issue will be addressed in negotiations for a final agreement and is therefore not part of the current deal. There has been no agreement over Iran's highly enriched uranium stockpile to be shipped out of the country.
The statement landed as both sides appeared to be edging towards a memorandum of understanding to formally end hostilities, halt the US naval blockade on Iranian ports, and secure the release of Iran's frozen assets. Trump had called off a planned strike earlier in the week after Gulf leaders asked him to give diplomacy a few more days. But the gap between the two sides remains wide. Washington has pushed for Iran to relinquish its enriched uranium stockpile and has previously demanded a permanent end to enrichment altogether, a position Trump last week appeared to soften, signaling he could accept a 20-year halt. Tehran has shown no appetite for either. Meanwhile, the IRGC's tone was anything but conciliatory. The Islamic Revolution Guards Corps marked the anniversary of the 1982 liberation of Khorramshahr, with a statement declaring that the country's armed forces were at their highest level of readiness across missile, air, naval, land, space, and cyber dimensions.
Any renewed aggression by the enemy will result in a devastating and hellish response at the regional and extra-regional level.
Iran's foreign ministry spokesman also invoked ancient history on social media, comparing Washington's position to that of Roman emperors who marched east against Persia and were forced to negotiate on Iranian terms. The war began on February 28th. A ceasefire brokered by Pakistan took hold on April 8th. Negotiations are continuing. The Strait of Hormuz remains largely closed, and Iran's enriched uranium remains in Iran. Trump was supposed to be at his son's wedding. Instead, he is at the White House, meeting with his war council, and the world is watching to see what comes next. The current crisis did not begin overnight. The United States and Iran have spent weeks trapped in tense indirect negotiations after the earlier phase of the war devastated military sites, disrupted oil routes, and rattled global energy markets. Two US officials told Axios that Trump convened his senior national security team on May 22nd to discuss a potential resumption of the war with Iran. Vice President Vance, Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, CIA Director John Ratcliffe, and White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles were in the room. A source close to the American president told Axios he has raised the possibility of a final decisive military operation after which he could declare victory and end the war. No decision has been made, but the signals are unmistakable. Military and intelligence personnel have cancelled their Memorial Day weekend plans. Trump himself has abandoned plans to spend the weekend at his golf property in Bedminster, New Jersey, and will not attend his son Don Jr.'s wedding.
While I very much wanted to be with my son Don Jr. and the newest member of the Trump family, his soon-to-be wife, Bettina, circumstances pertaining to government and my love for the United States of America do not allow me to do so. I feel it is important for me to remain in Washington, D.C. at the White House during this important period of time. Congratulations to Don and Bettina.
Iran's foreign ministry confirmed talks were ongoing, but said a deal was not close. Iran's state media reported that Pakistan Army Chief Asim Munir held talks with Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi in Tehran, as Islamabad stepped up diplomatic efforts to help mediate between Iran and the United States. At the same time, as Trump weighs another round of aggression, the IRGC has warned that any renewed US or Israeli military action would expand the conflict beyond the Middle East. An Iranian military source was more specific, telling the state-affiliated Tasnim news agency that Iran's armed forces have prepared new scenarios for what it called any stupidity from the enemy, including new targets, new equipment, and what it described as trans-regional fronts.
The Iranian armed forces are fully monitoring the situation and have prepared new scenarios for confronting the US and its allies in case the enemy conducts any stupidity under any excuse. In the event of excessive demand, excuses, and possible military action against Iran, The United States will experience its third major punishment in less than a year in a more specific and new way. We are men of war, and you will see our power on the battlefield, not in hollow statements and virtual pages.
The next move could determine whether this crisis ends with a deal or with another wave of missiles across the Middle East.